Hello, I'm Brenda, and in this video on Write Your Story, we're going to look at a question that comes up quite often in my memoir mentoring. And it's this: how soon do I let the reader know what's at stake? When do I tell them what the real problem is? Shouldn't I keep it a little on the side so that there's a surprise element for them? Isn't that what's going to keep them reading and turning the page to find out what happens? I've had this question a number of times, but it came to the fore again recently when a member of my memoir mentoring group raised it again, saying she had read a quote from Lisa Cron of the book Wired for Story, who said this: "Our brains want to have a certainty of an outcome, otherwise we get bored and stop reading." Then the person in my memoir mentoring group went on to say, but then if we know what's going to happen, there's no surprise or twist. And isn't that boring as well? So what do? Do we write a story that has the certainty of an outcome? And how does that deal with intrigue, curiosity for the reader? Or do we need to hold it back so that we have a sting in the tail, we have a surprise that the reader didn't see coming? And isn't that what keeps them turning the page? To start to answer this question, we need to step back a moment. And I think one of the things we need to understand as readers, when we're readers, is that innately we want to anticipate what is going to happen. An easy story to read is a story where the writer gives us clues, where the writer has breadcrumbs for us to follow, like Hansel and Gretel. But instead of breadcrumbs we follow so that we can go back home, as in Hansel and Gretel, we have breadcrumbs, we have hints, we have clues that the writer has left for us as the reader to follow, so that we keep turning the page, so that we can see where we are going. So for example, I was reading a manuscript recently where the writer had put some really key component about a core relationship in his life, I would say 2/3 of the way through his memoir. But at the beginning of the memoir, this key person in his life, he really just touched on very lightly about this relationship, made some inference about it, one example, and moved on. So it didn't come across as really a key component in how it shaped his life moving forward. And so my response to him was, this key component that comes up at this stage of your story, you need to guide the reader by showing them how important it is and how influential it was in your life right at the beginning. And then through your story, you need to come back to it in some shape or form, even just like a little pebble, just a little skipping stone, so that by the time you get to this section, the reader has tracked it, the reader has seen it coming. So now then we have the issue of, well, what about the surprise element? What is keeping the reader reading? And I think we need to understand what's keeping the reader reading is not what happened. And I'm going to illustrate this perfectly for you shortly, so just wait. The issue isn't what happened. That's not what you have to keep in reserve. That's not what the reader is tracking for as to what happened. You can tell them what happened right at the beginning. In fact, Marion Roach Smith says in her book, The Memoir Project, the reader needs to know what's at stake by the 4th paragraph of the opening chapter. So you can let them know the big problem, and watch my previous video on story and plot and problem. You can let them know the big problem that you're grappling with in your story right at the beginning. And it's not giving the story away. And this is why. The reader is going to know what the what is, because you're going to put it on your back cover of your book. To get them to read the story in the first place, the back cover of your book is going to tell them what the problem is that you are going to grapple with in your memoir. They already know. So get to the problem quickly. You're not giving the story away. The what is what the reader is going to know. What they're not going to know is the why and the how. We could start with the same what problem in our lives and in our memoir. The difference is going to be how it played out in my life versus how it played out in your life. Why I responded the way I did in my life to the same problem, and why you responded the way you did. And the how and the why become intriguing for the reader. The how is actually a lot of the plot, and the why is that internal motivation, that internal challenge within you that the reader is going to find intriguing. So that is what they're chasing. That's what they're reading. That's what they're curious about, is how it played out in your life and how you grappled with it, how it changed you internally. And the other why that they're chasing is, why did we get to this place in the first place? Why did it play out the way that it did? What is the backstory that speaks into this story and how we got here in the first place? That's what the reader is going to chase and follow and read and be the page turner. And how it all eventually plays out in the end. How does this play out in the end? That's what they're chasing, not what the problem is. That's drawing them in. The why and the how keep them reading. So let me give you an example of this in this memoir, which I have discussed before on my channel, and it's the one by Abigail Thomas called What Comes Next and How to Like It. And we're going to look at this back cover. She not only introduces the problem, she blows it apart. And it says on the back cover, Abigail and Chuck have been best friends for 35 years. They have stood by each other for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, through deaths and divorces. With open hearts, generous spirits, and the gift of humor, they weathered the explosive affair that nearly shattered their bond. So she does, in the first paragraph, introduce us to the fact that there is an affair that happens that nearly breaks up this 35-year relationship, this platonic relationship, this friendship relationship she has with Chuck. And she doesn't just tell us the affair, she tells us the shocking nature of the affair, and it's this. It couldn't have been anybody else's daughter, Chuck told Abigail. He had fallen in love with Catherine, the youngest of her children. It's not that he has an affair because they're not in a romantic relationship. It's the fact that her best friend has an affair with her child, her youngest daughter. And that breaks the relationship. That puts the relationship under strain. And so there you can see on the back cover is the problem. The problem of this affair with her daughter by her best friend, and how this now is going to challenge Abigail Thomas and the internal change it's going to take her through, how it's going to play out in her relationship with her daughter, how it's going to play out in her relationship with her best friend, and how it's going to play out in the rest of her life as she grapples with this problem. That is revealing it on the back page. The rest of the book is the how she grapples with it, the why that goes on inside of her, and how this actually came to be in the first place, and how it resolves at the end. That is intriguing to the reader. So this is my video and the answer to that question: how soon do we tell the reader what the big problem is in our story? On the back cover, in the first chapter, on the first page, by the 4th paragraph, according to Marion Roach Smith, you need to let them know what is at stake. In my next video, we're going to look at that book cover, how important it is for you to actually think about your book cover before you even start writing your memoir, so that it helps to lead and guide you in the structure of formulating your memoir before you perhaps even start to write it. To not miss that video, do subscribe and click on the notification bell.